The Carolina Hurricanes head into the preseason looking for that edge, but will they sign some controversial players who are now free agents? Zach Martin of Locked On Hurricanes will talk about that, and a look at the team as preseason gets underway next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes, Zach Martin. And Zach, an exciting time. The Canes looking to get back to their another deep playoff run, maybe even take it even further this year. But some questions now. A lot of rumors out there that the Canes may be interested in some of the players who have just been removed from suspension after the Hockey Canada controversy. What are you hearing and where are we at with this?
Yeah, of course. And before we start, thank you, Gil, for the invite as always. Always good to talk hockey with you. To be honest, the only person that's talked about it is David Pagnotta, and we all know he's very more hit-miss than hit when it comes to stuff like that. So I'm just taking it with a grain of salt because I've heard nothing else from any of the credible sources like Chris Johnson, Pierre LeBrun, Elliot Freeman. Haven't really heard very much anything. It sounds like it's just Pagnotta. So if I'm the Carolina Hurricanes, and I know they're the linked players are McLeod and Carter Hart, thing is the defense doesn't need another guy. Like, you got Slavin locked up for 8 years. His new contract starts. You just signed Keandre Miller to his 8-year contract. Alexander Nikishin is going to be playing in his first full season in the NHL on his last year of his ELC. You know, there's a contract coming his way. You still got Sean Walker for another 4 seasons. Then you still got Shane Gostisbehere, including this year, 2 years left. And you just signed Mike Riley. Of course, all know about him, Gil, as our 7th defenseman. And they just, Gavin Bayreuther on a 1-year 2-way. So I just don't see the need to go get a Michael McLeod where the defense is at right now. And goaltending, Carter Hart, I mean, you got Frederick Anderson back for this season. You got Peter Kacheka for 2 more years, and you just signed Keenan Primo, who just came off an insane AHL season with the Laval Rocket. And the thing is, there's so many better UFA, RFAs to go for next season in free agency that doesn't come with controversy around his name. And for me, like I said, I've heard it from no other credible sources. It's just one guy talking about it. So I'm not really too concerned about it. And honestly, it just doesn't make any sense for the Hurricanes. And when you're talking about a team that preaches about character and, culture and stuff like that, adding 2 guys like that, regardless of how good they are on the ice, that's one way to alienate a fan base. And it kind of torpedoes a lot of what you built in the Rod Brind'Amour era. So for me, it doesn't make sense. And I've heard nothing else from anywhere else outside of Pagnotta.
All right, we'll see if anything does develop there. We're early on in training camp right now. What has impressed you most, or who has impressed you most so far?
I think Logan Stankoven's done pretty well so far in the first few days of camp, because we are looking at him going now on day 4 of being the second-line center for the Carolina Hurricanes, because that's kind of one of the bigger questions. Will they run it back to just Barry Kotkaniemi, or will someone else kind of take some reps? And after day 1, they were like, oh, we're going to see what it looks like with him there, because he's done it before with the Dallas Stars, did it for the Texas Stars as well, even did it all the way back at this WHL time with Kamloops. So, and we just thought maybe one day, could be a couple days, but now it's been 4 days of him being at the 2C spot. And they've been talking about how they need a right shot center. Well, he's a right shot, and he's played center, and he's been taking some early reps. So far he's doing pretty good there. Other than that, it's good to see, Alexander Nikishin getting some, actual training camp time to kind of get used to the roster, and he's with Shane Gostisbehere, which is a good guy to learn from as well. So far, I'd say those 2 guys are doing pretty well. And just overall, you're finally looking at Ehlers, what he can do, and Keandre Miller in Hurricanes colors as well. So it's fun to see what they're doing right now early on in camp.
Any prospects that you feel have a really good chance of making this roster, or is it close to set?
I'd say it's almost kind of set for the most part. I would say it might be harder on the forward. Well, I wouldn't say harder on the forwards. It might be a little bit harder on the forwards, maybe on the defense too. But I'd say if you're looking at guys who could be ready right now that might make a push, Bradley Nadeau on the forward side, because his shot, we all know, is NHL ready. He came into the prospect tournament with a little bit extra bite to his game and a little bit more defense, and they threw him on the PK to kind of get some reps out of him in the prospect showcase, and he did pretty well. And Charles Alexis Legault, a right shot, right side defenseman, looked really well. His size is just absolutely amazing. Look, you're talking about a guy who's like 6'4", 6'5", 215, physical. Got a little bit more offensive side of his game that people don't realize, but just his big body is NHL ready right now too. So if there's a defenseman to make some noise, I'd say look at Charles Alexis Legault on the forward side, Bradley Nadeau. Are they going to make it out of camp? You never say never, because we've seen it with Jackson Blake last year and Seth Jarvis a couple seasons ago. So it'll be interesting, but I say if there's one guy from each group, I think it's those two.
What is the team's biggest concern now as we head into the preseason?
I know we've been kind of talking about a lot. It's health. Can Freddie Anderson stay healthy? I know 2 seasons ago he's out for a blood clot. Nothing to do about that. Last year he had some knee trouble, got surgery, and now his knees are better for the first time in a while. So you're hoping that he plays a full season, because he's missed over 70 games the last 2 years. And Nikolaj Ehlers only played 69 games last year for the Jets. So you're kind of hoping that he's healthy for the whole season for the Hurricanes as well. So right now it's just hopefully health kind of plays out, because as of right now too, there's been news going around that maybe Jacob Slavin and Jalen Sheffield might not play in the preseason just for precaution, because there's no point of rushing these guys out in a preseason game or stuff like that if they're not 100%. So I'm not really concerned about those guys being out. It's more just it's precaution. They're going to be ready for the season. Like, why rush them back for the not 100%? So health for the most part is kind of the biggest concern for the Canes, but it's not like DEFCON 5 where it's like, oh, sound the alarm type of stuff.
So, I mean, here we are. This is a Carolina Hurricanes team that has had some outstanding regular seasons, gotten to the conference final several times, can't seem to get over that hump and get to the Stanley Cup final. What do you think has been the missing ingredient for this team during this run, and have they addressed it?
I would definitely say probably special teams was kind of the big concern last year going into the playoffs, and somehow they did score like almost close to 10 power play goals, which is kind of crazy to think about. So hopefully that kind of stays a little bit more consistent throughout the playoffs, and scoring kind of, went cold a couple times too. So you're hopefully, with the addition of Nikolaj Ehlers, being on your first line and first power play, hopefully you get some scoring in that aspect, and just finding a way to not hit a buzzsaw of the Florida Panthers is kind of one of the main things are. But I mean, the Hurricanes they've made the Eastern Conference Final 2 of the last 3 years, 3 of the last 8 or 3 of the last 7 in the Bryn Mawr era. So they know how to get there. It's just, I think it's just a culmination of making sure your power play stays good, make sure your penalty kill stays locked in like it has been the last few seasons. We were talking top 3, top 1 in the league for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So you're just kind of hoping that special teams plays out, and that you get a lot of scoring out of your big guys and your bottom 6, because, you had Seth Jarvis, Aho, and Svechnikov kind of lead the way with 15, 14, 16 points there. So, but, you got to get all your other guys going too. You can't just rely on 3 guys. So hopefully you're seeing that scoring kind of goes up around the whole roster.
Does it become psychological at a certain point? Does it start to get into these guys' heads after a while?
I mean, maybe. I mean, we all know this is a very mental game too. We know how physical the playoffs get, so it's another level of stress, another level of mental toughness, because you have to go through a grind where you're playing the same team 4 to 7 times around, so you're kind of seeing these guys every other night for the most part, so you're not really getting a break. So it's just kind of trying to figure out how to battle through all that. So I think after a while, probably, but I think with the way this Hurricanes team is and how Rod Brind'Amour is, these guys know how to flush games really quick and get ready for the next one. So it's just you gotta get the bounces going your way. And unfortunately, they were on the bad end of some bounces, but if they just kind of stick with it and kind of get the bounces their way and play complete 60-minute hockey games and get over that mental hurdle, I think we could see the Carolina Hurricanes making the Cup final for the first time since they won the whole thing back in 2006.
All right, Zach, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, of course. We're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also on YouTube. Everything's Locked On Hurricanes there. Social, it's LO_Hurricanes on Twitter or X, or whatever you want to call it. If you want to find me, I'm at OneTreeZach on X, and you can find me on there. I have link trees in my bios where you can find me and the podcast and all of my articles that I write too. So staying very busy, but that's where you can find me.
All right. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. If you like player props or maybe building a same-game parlay to win even more, or jumping in live as the action unfolds, it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your favorite team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Check it out today.